So I'm going to start the video with a big question. Do artists have copyrights on poses? Can they claim poses? Now, of course, you're probably wondering why I would even ask that. That should be like a duh. Of course they don't. There's no universe. No artist owes any pose, and any artist trying to do so is insane. They're literally out of their mind because there's no universe where you can claim copyright on poses. But then if I repose the question, can artists claim copyright on a composition with that pose? Then it starts to become a little bit more muddied, and it becomes a situation of, well, they can't own the pose, but if it looks like the artwork is very similar, then, you know, that's a little different discussion. And we're not even going to include the copyright part. Anyways, the reason I wanted to make this video was a couple days ago, I made a video talking about the Dan to Dan situation, and it led me down another rabbit hole to another topic, which I wanted to talk about because I noticed this a lot. It happens for a decent amount of time online. At least whenever I look at artwork and I see discussions in the comment section, it'll be some artwork, and then someone will say, hey, I think you took this this pose, this artwork from somebody else, and why aren't you saying anything about it? When in reality, what happened was the artist just happened to use a reference that is pretty popular that a lot of people use. Or in this case in particular, an artist is commissioned the reference they're sent is some artwork made by somebody else, and they say, hey, I want something similar. And yeah, you can already tell that's going to lead to some heated discussions, but we'll get into all that later. And so I figured today's video would be a good one to have a discussion around this topic and explain this situation and kind of go over it and then hear your thoughts, see what you think about it. So I originally started with this post right here. As you can see, 7 million views. Again, this one kind of went under the radar. I wasn't even aware of this one. And again, because I recently came across it, I want to go over it. So it originally started said addressing the situation with this artist. Says sorry for the bad English. So it starts off with this, and they show their version right here of a Dan to Dan artwork they did, and then this is the artwork that the other person used right here. And so from this alone, they're pretty much trying to imply that their artwork was probably traced or was heavily referenced or heavily copied, and so they wanted to speak up about this because they believe that it probably isn't the right thing to do. Now again, we'll get into all that a little bit later, but yeah. And then the other part I want to add from the last video, someone mentioned that for the Lin artists, they were caught tracing for the Dan to Dan artwork. They were tracing stills, or allegedly they were copying that. Again, I couldn't tell you without a shadow of a doubt. Looking down the rabbit hole, trying to find that specific stuff is hard to say, but I can understand if that was the case and that if there is a lot of proof and a lot of evidence backing that up, then I can see why people would allege that Lin is tracing this artist's artwork. So it continues by saying, so yesterday I woke up and found a lot of notifications from Twitter, and I was pretty confused as I was scrolling through them. It seemed that Lin was commissioned by someone to draw them as Okarun and Momo and sent my art as a reference to not knowing who actually made the artwork. So this is the conversation they showed. So do you have any reference? And then this is what they show. It says born to pose like this. It said my boyfriend chose this pose, so bear with me. Continuing on, it says now this connects to the fact that if you didn't know, this specific piece has been reposted and stolen for selling purposes without my knowledge. A lot of people believe that this piece is official art, but I posted the speed paint on TikTok and that's where it blew up. Now, that's, of course, a very real situation that does happen a lot. A lot of artists' artwork gets stolen and it gets reposted on TikTok. And a lot of people actually try to make merchandise or sell merchandise off other artists' artwork without them knowing. And TikTok typically doesn't do anything, which is really scummy on their part. Even if you report them, you get a lot of people report them. They don't really do much about it, which is a big L on TikTok's part. Do better. That's what I say, even though they're not going to watch this video. They don't care. Continuing on, says, so I wouldn't be surprised if the commissioner thought it was official art, even because I make my watermarks as small as possible and not too noticeable because I don't want to ruin the feel of a piece. I was overwhelmed by the fact that this piece almost feels like a curse. And so this is the account right here where they show how this account just takes other people's artwork and tries to make merchandise around it. And this was the post right here. It said Momo X Okarun, Dan to Dan Supercell, 50% off, buy now. And I just think it's so trash. I really hate when people do that. That's so scummy, dog. Like, oh, I get it. People are money hungry. They don't have any ethics. They don't have any morals. So they're like, who cares? Who's going to stop them? Because the chance of an artist really going through the trouble of a legal battle or trying to sue anyone who makes any profit off this stuff is almost non-existent, right? Unless you're an artist that has like a team of lawyers ready to go. So I can see why they do it, but it doesn't make it any better. I think that's trash. I think that's awful. And I really do wish that TikTok did a lot better on that. Anyways, continuing on with this, they said, it felt like it was just here to bring me discomfort. And since I'm already not doing too well, I let my discomfort show in the situation. I do admit that I'm not happy at this, but it's true that even at first thought, I thought it was Trace. It's clearly not. And then they showed their artwork and then Lynn's artwork, trying to show a side by side that, hey, it's not the exact same thing. Lynn did their own version. It's not the same as this one. Continuing on, they said, I never had any issues with Lynn, nor against what some people said. Was I looking for attention or trying to send hate towards her? Lynn does not deserve hate, and between the two of us, it's clear that she's the one that received the most of it, and I'm not okay with it. And they're pretty much referring to people, again, this falls after the aftermath of the whole Black Okaroon situation. So a lot of people were already upset with that. And so if a lot of people are already upset with Lynn because that situation is already going to have a negative bias towards anything Lynn does after that. So they're going to receive most of the hate regardless whether or not they are in the right or wrong. Again, I'm not trying to say if they are right or if they are wrong, but if people already have a negative bias of you because of something you've already done in the past, then no matter what you do going forward, it's going to be a lot harder for people to have any positive outlook or give you the benefit of the doubt. They're already going to have a negative outlook and think that whatever you do going forward is probably trash, garbage, and that it can't possibly be good. And so continuing on, they said, it's true. I had this picture as a reference and I don't own the pose and I'm fully aware of it and you can stop bringing it up now. I'm sorry for the way I reacted. As I said, I was overwhelmed and didn't think clearly. So typically in a lot of these situations that I noticed what happens as well too is whenever things like this is brought up, whether an artist is claiming that another artist is copying their pose or they're copying the composition, the style, a lot of people start bringing the receipts, say, hey, is this you? And what they're showing is the actual pose itself, which is what you just saw right here. A lot of people will tend to sniff that out and call it out, especially if it's a popular pose, and they'll say, hey, what are you talking about here, dog? The pose is pretty common. You know, we all know about this. We found it. We found the refs. We found them clearly. So what are you talking about? You know, that's pretty much what a lot of people try to boil it down to. It's like, you don't own this pose. You don't own anything related to it. It's just a pose. You use it to make your Dan and Dan artwork, and they use it to draw their Dan and Dan artwork. Let's leave it at that. And so that's why a lot of people were pretty much clowning on this artist for that, because I mean, yeah, I can see it. I mean, this is something that you see a lot of online. You'll see an artist have a pose for their artwork, and then there'll be another artist who does something similar. Maybe they tweak a couple things, and then the artist will get claimed as tracing, even though when you put it side by side or you put it on top of each other, it wasn't traced. I think a lot of people tend to get that term really misused a lot. You can claim that they copied it pretty well, that they, you know, looked at it pretty heavily and they heavily referenced it. But typically, more times than not, an artist doesn't trace that well to the point where they're going to have it one-to-one. They'll at least pretty much just do it by eye. At least if the artist is somewhat skilled and they know what they're doing, they'll pretty much just copy it, but they won't trace it. Which, whether or not you want to say that's good or bad, it's up to you. Depends on the artwork, of course, goes piece by piece. But yeah. Continuing on, they said, after responding to like literally 2/3 of the comments out of all the ones that I kept on receiving through the day, I realized I had to fix the situation in private. I had already issued an apology from her through my messages, but wanted to personally apologize too. I didn't want any of this to start. I understand that maybe people have different opinions on this just like me, but at the moment, I really want to put it into this. I don't care if Lynn used my piece as a reference anymore, as long as there is peace between us. And after talking, it's clear that we have no harsh feelings against each other, and we also don't hold any grudges. Stop sending hate towards all of us, Commissioner included. It's true that they could have looked for the source of the drawing, but I can't blame them. As I said, the drawing has been reposted so many times that pretty much no one knows who it belongs to. And I had to talk with both of them, and we cleared the situation. It's ridiculous drama that shouldn't have started in the first place, and it's unnecessarily going. To the people who like spreading hate instead of giving helpful criticism or just teaching something in a harmless way, please go take a walk and breathe some fresh air before putting your hands on the keyboard again. Thanks. And then they said, this is again no harsh feeling towards Lynn at all. I just want everything to be chill and grow a nice community as I stay in this app, and especially make friends instead of enemies. And so that's pretty much where that situation ended. They talked it out, they settled it, and of course a lot of people have their own discussions, their own thoughts. I know going through it, there's a lot of discussion around the hijab right here. A lot of people thought this was disrespectful or was really rude or inconsiderate, especially with the skirt. I couldn't really tell you. I'm not going to pretend to act like I know the culture around anything of that caliber, but I know some people said that. But I do know that it also leads to the discussion of, hey, You know, when it comes to commissioning and you get sent references or people are told, hey, I want you to do this, should you as the artist decline the pose and say, hey, find me something that doesn't use someone else's artwork? Or should you try and find a pose yourself and then show it to the person who's trying to commission and say, hey, would you like to try this instead? Do you think it's morally wrong or morally right to have someone else's artist sent to you as a reference to draw something that the person wants you to create? And in this case with Ichigo, do you think that they're right that Lin should have found them and found the original artwork and I guess talked to them about it beforehand before they made their own version for the commission? What do you think? Again, I know this is going to probably be a very polarizing topic and everyone's going to have their own ideas of what's right and what's wrong, what's okay and what isn't. How far can you heavily reference something before it's, I guess, taking it or stealing? And yeah, I know there's a lot of discussion that could be had towards this, and that's why I wanted to open up. Again, I want to make these videos to have discussions and see what everybody else thinks. And for any new artists who end up watching these videos or they read the comment sections and they're kind of like overwhelmed by the amount of different opinions they might see or read, remember that the art community is not just one person. It's not just me, it's not just dumb, it's pretty much a lot of different people, and a lot of people have their own opinions, what they think is right, what they think is wrong, and pretty much you can just go through it and form your own opinion from it. But that's the reason why I make this, so that there's at least opinions to be out there, opinions to be read, and you can form your own thoughts from what you see and what you think is morally right, morally wrong, etc., etc. Also, I just want to include this as well too, since we're on the topic of poses. I pulled a couple of tabs up for a Twitter page that you can, check out that you might find some usefulness out of. I like this one. It's called Insane Poses. They have some pretty cool stuff that, if you're ever looking for some creative ideas, maybe you're looking for some new poses to try out for your art, I think this page is really good. They got some pretty good bangers on there. A couple, of course, there's going to be misses here and there or things you might not like, but I do think that there are a pretty good set of poses that you can find on this account that are actually pretty cool. Another one is CSP. I don't know if you've ever used Clip Studio Paint, but they have a 3D model function. You also don't even need to own Clip Studio Paint to use their model function. Yes, you'll need it to actually save anything that you make within it, but I think that at least if you just need a 3D model to use and you don't really need to save any presets for body types or anything of that caliber, then this is pretty useful in terms of what you can find and create something of your own, especially for the fact that the marketplace has a lot of free poses that people make that you can just drag and drop as well too, which makes things really easy as well too. This is another one, pose.myart or posemy.art. This is another one. This is a free tool to make poses. There's a lot of tools, a lot of references out there. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to go to the comment section and say, hey, who needs all these references or things that, like that, when you could just use a 3D model or you can model it yourself and you don't need to see someone else's art or anything of that caliber. And I mean, not wrong, but yeah, just wanted to provide these options as well too. So if you're looking for something, check it out. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to look into these. Anyways, you made this far into the video, so again, like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment what you think. Have a great day. Yeah.